You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Well, happy Tuesday evening, folks. This is Scotty Roberts. You're watching and listening to the Intrepid radio program right here in the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. Go on over, see all the goodness that's Odyssey Radio and all the different times of the day where you can hear these broadcasts played on Odyssey Radio. Also, you're watching on my YouTube, youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And so welcome to the show tonight. If you are not a member of this channel, make yourself so now. Hit the little join button down below, and it'll bring up a little window and show you the 3 ways you can become a member of this channel. And I will thank you already to those of you who already are, and those of you who will be. And I just noticed in looking at my monitor, I haven't looked in the mirror for quite some time today. I'm all wind tossed. We had storm warnings for the last couple of days, and it didn't rain. Well, we got rain. We just didn't get any storms. And then it was hot and humid. And then that all went away on the winds. We had these monstrous winds blowing in. But it's gorgeous outside. Gorgeous blue skies and a few puffy clouds here and there, flitting by very quickly. And so a gorgeous day, and the temps have dropped down. I think we're into the 70s now. It's going to be only in the 50s and 60s all next week, but with nice sunshine. So that works for me. All the rest of this week, I should say. So that works for me. Hey, guys over there. Field guy, good to see you, brother. You were the first one here, I do believe. It says you're turning into something. Is that like a harpy or something? But with superpowers. So you're a harpy with superpowers. That's fantastic. Congrats, field guy. Morgan Snow, good to see you in here tonight. Who else we got? We got Master Finn, Matt Finn. Good to see you here, brother. And keeping things in order over there, I see, in the chat room. And Doug Stack, the 100 pounds lighter Doug Stack. Good to have you on the program here tonight. And by the way, saying the words on the program, I'm just going to copy the link, and we'll throw it in over here. If you've got something you want to add to tonight's topic as we get into it, or just want to stop in and say, hey, you're welcome to do that with that link. And so spread that link around. People will get it. So Doug Stack, I'm happy for you. Congrats, man. That's quite an accomplishment. Matthew Sainsbury, good to see you, brother, down there in South America. And so good to see you there. Field guy says it's hot and humid. What's that? Always the case there. Yeah, that's what I don't like about Louisiana. I don't like hot and humid. I don't like it when it gets hot and humid up here. So down there, it's even worse hot and humid. It's like swamp hot and humid down there. So I don't like it at all. And let's see. Alan Stiles is here. Good to see you, brother. Glad you're here. Glad you're in the chat room. And I'll say hey to people as they come in. So pardon my wild post-middle-age hair, but that's what the wind does. The wind blows it all up. It gets all, it's like that usually. And I come in and I look in the mirror, and I've been walking around in a store like that for an hour. And then I go home and I get back in. I say to Rennie, why don't you tell me my hair looked like that? And she said she thought it was funny. So there you go. And so Barbados in the Caribbean, man. So wait, why am I a sheep again? This is field guys. Smells like ass. I have no idea, brother. That sounds very personal. And so welcome to the show tonight. Did you know that here in the United States, we've talked about this, it's legal to own a gun. It's also legal to carry a gun. States have their regulations and their laws. The Second Amendment doesn't give you the right to carry a gun. The Second Amendment to our Constitution guarantees the right that you already possess to own and bear arms. Okay? We all know this. That's pretty academic when it comes to the United States, anyway. I would like to challenge some high school kids, maybe even some college kids, to see if they even know the difference about what is a right and versus what the Constitution guarantees, because it's not something granted by the Constitution. It's something the Constitution protects. It protects our rights. And so, did you know that the state of Texas is set to allow unlicensed handgun carry, despite all the outcry about it? And I kind of think it's rather they're kind of thumbing their nose at the Biden administration. Oh, yeah, you want to impose all kinds of new gun laws? Tell you what, down here in Texas, since it's not unconstitutional as a state, we can go against whatever the president and his administration or any party wants to try to impose. That's another thing, folks. When you see laws in states that are seemingly contradictory to laws or national laws on the books, the basis for being able to do that is states can make their own laws as long as they do not attempt to supersede the Constitution. They can supersede federal law, which could be what Texas is starting to do right now. So anything is legal in Texas right now, says Field Guy. So the Republican-dominated legislature in Texas approved the measure on Monday, sending it to Governor Greg Abbott. And Texas is poised to remove one of its last major gun restrictions after lawmakers approved allowing people to carry handguns without a license and the background check and training that go with it. And Rainey just walked in the room, so I'm going to invite her over here. Yo, Rainey.
You don't have to.
I just did.
I can sit over here and eat my strawberry.
No, why don't you come on over here? You're going to eat strawberries? Oh, she's got a monster strawberry. Rainey is going to do something that is quite seductive.
It's a monster strawberry.
She's going to eat her strawberry.
And habanero pepper cheese.
So you got habanero pepper cheese and strawberries.
Sweet and spicy.
Nice. I
Burns
guess.
better.
Just like me. Sweet and spicy. Burns better.
Ew.
So, how you doing today?
I'm doing.
Okay. I guess I already know how you're doing today. I've seen you all day.
Kind of, but not really.
Hold still. You got hair stuck to your face. Stuck to your face.
Stuck to my head, stuck to my face. I was outside playing in the... I was digging up plants and putting rocks in buckets.
Just bringing that down a little bit. So,
hi, everybody.
Hey, everybody. And so there's my lovely wife, Rainey. So now, are you going to be with us on Sunday, or do you have a massage on Sunday morning again?
Ooh, I can tell you in a couple minutes when I check my computer.
You check and just scream it over here and let us know.
Oh.
So, anyway. So, I asked my doctor about my ferritin levels, the iron in your blood, because Rainey's doing that. Because Rainey said, your hair, look at that, folks. They said your hair can go away quicker if you have low ferritin levels.
Low ferritin, low iron.
And so I asked my doc about that today, and he looked it up on all my tests. And he said, nah, you're just losing your hair. So there you go. He said, I don't have low ferritin levels. Oh, and Doug had his landmark today. He lost 100 pounds as of today. So big congratulations. I had a little landmark. My A1C, for those of you who are diabetic, is down about 3 points. I had jumped up for some reason to, like, those of you who are diabetic know this, 11.3, I think it was. Today, I was 8.1. He said, if you can get that down to 7, he says, I'm going to be really happy, my doc. My doc said 3 times. It was just a checkup because I'd been gone in Louisiana, for so long. And he wanted to see me and check on my heart, check on my diabetes. And 3 times during the meeting, he kind of looked over and he said, and he's smiling, he goes, I'm so proud of you. He says that A1C is down. Now, my doc is a big guy. He's pretty well built. He was an athletic doctor. And he's an athletic type of a guy, younger guy, maybe 40 at the earliest, or at the youngest, or at the oldest. And so to look, and he looked at me, and the third time he said it, I said, "I think I'm seeing a tear in your eye," and he laughed. So there you go. So my A1C's down. How about that? And let's see. Yes.
I work Friday morning.
Friday morning she works.
Friday night.
Friday night she
I
works.
work Saturday morning.
Saturday morning she works.
And I work Sunday morning.
And what time?
9 to 10:30.
Damn it. She's got a 9 to 10:30 massage on Sunday.
Sorry, folks.
So
I make $100 an hour.
So I'm gonna have to find. And she makes $100 an hour, so that's pretty good.
You can book me if you want to.
Okay, I'll book you.
Okay.
Cost me $100.
$100 for the hour.
Oh, dude. Hold on.
I can't cancel this one though, so you'll have to wait till next Sunday.
Here. How about a down payment? I got $2.
$2? Not that cheap.
Down payment. Come get it. It's yours.
Make me try to touch you. Ew.
She,
Sure you
you didn't even get the cash.
Oh, here, let me try again.
Oh, no. Stay out of my clothes. Stay out of my clothes. Stay out of my clothes. Ouch. Ouch.
Got it.
Whew.
Only one.
Ow. Ow. So.
Only because you miss Sunday mornings.
That's right. That's right.
Nobody else can do that except for me.
I get a massage because she's missing now 3 Sunday mornings in a row.
No, what?
Rainy ain't no cheap wine, bro. Ain't that the truth? Yeah. So yeah, she's expensive. So even for me, guys, you'd think, because do you know how many people I tell, "Oh, my wife's a massage therapist," and they all go, "Oh, you are so lucky." I'm like, yeah. Ask me what year was the last year I got a massage.
You got a massage this year. You just
kinda.
You just winced like a baby, and then I had to stop.
I winced like a baby. I was so sore when she gave me that massage. Everything ached. I don't know what was that.
That you were having that like kink neck shoulder.
Oh, the kink neck.
Remember?
She just had me lay on my back or my stomach. She started rubbing my shoulders. I was just like, yeah.
I just barely went like this, and he was like,
horrible.
Oh!
Here, show him. Just give him an example of what it looks like to get a massage.
This is not what a massage looks like. You got to be face down at the table.
Oh. You gotta have my face where?
In the table.
Oh.
In the table hole. There we go.
There you
elbow
go.
Up in there.
Yeah.
There you go.
Whew. Man. So may that money keep rolling so y'all can buy a house. Ain't that the truth, Delaney?
You know, I've been booking up pretty good, which is really nice.
She does. Yeah.
And I started using a new app called Calendly. And the hotel that I usually work for really likes it and has been booking me. So without even texting or calling me to say, "Hey, are you available?" they can go.
That's nice.
And book it. I've booked 3 massages for next week already.
That's fantastic.
Just today.
And so, she's going to start not being part-time anymore doing this. She's going to be doing a lot of massage work. And and the price is good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'll come to your house for $100 if anybody's local.
Yeah, she will. For $100, she'll drive out to your house and give you a massage.
Yeah.
I thought that was $150.
It depends on how long you want.
Oh, I want a long one. No, wait, that could be so misinterpreted. That could be so misinterpreted. So, well, thanks for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Have a fun show.
Yeah, we'll do our best.
I'm gonna go over here, finish messing with my schedule.
Touching her butt.
I'm going to bed.
All right.
Good night, folks.
I'm staying here. So she could tempt me to quit the stop. Temptress. She could tempt me to leave the show right now, by the way.
Couldn't.
Sure you could.
No, I couldn't.
Give me an example of what you do if you wanted me over there right now leaving the show.
If I want to do I could yell, "Ellie's fingers cut off," and then he would come over.
All right. That's not what I meant. You're no fun. I don't get any fun. I can't do anything ever. So there you go. Thanks, Rennie. Good night, says Matthew Sainsbury. Just think of that Pink Floyd song with the cash registers. There it is. Yeah.
I'll have to look that up. I don't know that I know that one.
So, boy, I'm obsessed with how bad my hair looks right now from standing in the wind. So I'm not going to look anymore. So anyway, the Texas legislation, that's what we were talking about. They're poised to remove one of its last major gun restrictions after lawmakers approved allowing people to carry handguns without a license, and the background check and the training that go with it. And so the Republican-dominated legislature approved the measure on Monday, sending it to Governor Greg Abbott, who said that he'll sign it, despite the objections of law enforcement groups who say it would endanger the public and the police. I would like to find out what law enforcement groups are saying that. So gun control groups also oppose the measure. Duh, they're going to oppose it, noting that the state's recent history of mass shootings, including those at the El Paso Walmart, a church in Sutherland Springs, and a high school outside of Houston. And so Texas has some of the loosest gun laws in the country already. And it has more than 1.6 million handgun license holders. And so supporters of the bill say it would allow Texans to better defend themselves in public while abolishing unnecessary impediments to the constitutional right to bear arms. And so once signed into law, Texas is going to join nearly 24 other states that allow some form of unregulated carry of a handgun and be by far the most populous. So this isn't just a Texas thing. This has gone on in at least a dozen other states. And so the National Rifle Association, the NRA, they were among those who supported the measure. And a spokesman called it the most significant gun rights measure in the state's history. And a right requiring you to pay a tax or obtain a government permission slip is not a right at all, said Jason Oyment. He's the executive director of the NRA Institute for Legislative Action. Get that? A right that requires you to pay a tax or obtain governmental permission isn't a right at all. So Texas already allows rifles to be carried in public without a license. The measure sent to Abbott would allow anyone aged 21 or older to carry a handgun as long as they don't have felony criminal convictions or some other legal prohibition in their background. But without the state background check, law enforcement groups worry that there would be no way to weed them out in a van. Now, notice they don't say the police. They're saying law enforcement groups. I'm wondering what the difference is there, who they're talking about, these law enforcement groups. It said there'd be no way to weed them out in advance, criminals. And so the bill does include stiffer penalties for felons caught illegally carrying guns. See, now there's the thing. A felon, once you've gone to prison and you've got a felony, you've been convicted of a felony, you can't own guns anymore. But now, without a license necessary, you could carry one. Bad guys carry them anyway, so I'm not worried about that part. But so that's what some people are worried about. So again, we're majoring on the minor issues. So it's like saying these shootings. I just listed 3 shootings that took place in Texas. The problem is that is a 0.00000. It was 5 zeros, 14%, 0.0000014% of the population that commit those crimes. So the bill would not prevent businesses from banning guns on their property, and federal background checks for some gun purchases would still remain in place. But Texas has no state requirements for background checks on private gun sales. And Texas has allowed people to carry handguns since 1995. And it's been reducing the cost and training requirements for getting a license for the last decade. Now, by the way, I firmly believe in training. I firmly believe that education eliminates lack of knowledge. That's not what I wanted to say. That's redundant. It eliminates the fear. It eliminates the what's the words I'm trying to find here? I've said it 100 times. if I've said it once. Education eliminates stupidity. Let's put it that way. Ignorance. It eradicates ignorance. And Texas' move to further loosen the gun laws galled the El Paso lawmakers, including Democratic Representative Joe Moody, who on Sunday night delivered an emotional address on the House floor that recounted being in rooms with the governor and family members searching for loved ones after the Walmart shooting in 2019. I'm sorry that happened to some people, but that is not how you legislate an entire state. So the 2021 legislative session is the first time that state lawmakers have met in session since the attack that killed 23 people. And the 2021 legislative session it's the first time. There were promises, Moody recalled, that the state would take gun safety seriously after the shooting. And authorities have said that the shooter had targeted Mexicans in the border city. When the doors were closed, I heard lots of promises, Moody said. I haven't heard them since. And you know what? Taking gun safety seriously, you can take gun safety seriously and honor our constitutionally guaranteed right to own and bear an arm unhindered. Boom. There it is. So I also saw something here. I thought this might be interesting to take a look at. Texas, regarding Texas, I just saw this has popped up, so I know we've got another topic for tonight, and we'll get to it in a few minutes, but Texas could become the latest state to ban critical race theory in schools. The bill comes amid nationwide push to crack down on CRT being taught in schools. That's critical race theory. Do you know what critical race theory is? I'm going to look it up so I give you a proper definition for this. Critical race theory is an academic movement of civil rights scholars and activists in the United States who seek to critically examine the law as it intersects with issues of race and to challenge mainstream liberal approaches to radical justice. So critical race theory examines social, cultural, legal issues as they relate to race and racism. And so it originated in the mid-1970s. What you doing over there, Rainey?
I was looking for that cream. I just bought cream for the girls.
Oh.
For their sunburn.
I have no idea what that is. Where it is.
Yeah.
So now the Texas Senate on Saturday passed a new version of a House bill that would ban the teaching of critical race theory in public schools. There's Senators Brian Hughes, Republican, introduced the Senate version of HB 3979 on Friday night, passed around 2 a.m. Saturday with 18 Republicans in favor and all 13 Democrats opposed. So this whole thing of race, what it has become in the last few years, is ridiculous. And I think Texas is basically once again saying, not here, not in Texas. And so last night and into the morning, Texas Senate debate critical race theory. We must teach the truth about our history and judge others based on the content of character and not the color of their skin, Hughes tweeted on Saturday. And that's the thing. How much, you might call it anti-racism, the anti-white thing, the whole race thing that's out there, the ridiculous levels it's become, how much of that is actually judging people or gauging people on the content of their character rather than the color of their skin? So I've heard that Aurora won too, but some of the newspaper backstory was a bit fishy. Yeah, a lot of them are. Hey, Barbie D, good to see you. Steve Clark, good to see you as well. Let's see, Senator Royce West. Boy, imagine a name like that with two S's in it. Royce West, meanwhile, was one of the many Democrats who voiced disappointment at the bill's passage. West said that he agreed with Hughes' contention that people shouldn't be judged by the color of their skin, but unfortunately, that's the plight today for African Americans, he said, Latinos and minorities in this country. Let's not whitewash it, because it is, and yes, we should be teaching our kids the history of this country so they won't make the same mistakes that were made by our generations before us, he said. And when we put up things like this, for instance, I think it's a disservice. I disagree with him. I think you can teach history and you can teach things. We teach the history even on this show. We taught the history of the conquering of the American West. That's a blight on our past. But we learn to overcome that. We don't use that to make new regulations and new laws and cater to people who feel they've been oppressed. So critical race theory is a school of thought that focuses on how power structures and institutions impact racial minorities. And it argues that race is a social construct that's weaponized by dominant groups to oppress others. Do you believe we have systemic racism in this country? I don't. I believe we have racists in this country, but I do not believe we are a system that's based on racism. So CRT's supporters, CRT, by the way, somebody was holding up a sign in a picture, creating racial tension, CRT. So CRT supporters say it helps dominant groups understanding. It helps them understand better and empathy of what the oppressed experience is on a regular basis. They say critical race theory training is a way to dismantle or weaken alleged structures imposing burdens through bias and discrimination. And by the way, there is a segue into tonight's topic off of this. But CRT's opponents argue that it's inherently divisive. Critical race theory is divisive. It creates collective guilt for dominant groups and assigns racial significance to seemingly innocuous concepts. So the Texas Senate bill, which isn't much different from the House version, aims to rein in what public school students in Texas can be taught about racism. HB 3979 now heads back to the House before heading to Governor Abbott's desk for final approval. And the bill comes amidst a nationwide push to crack down on CRT, critical race theory, being taught in schools. On Wednesday, a coalition of 20 state attorneys general called for the Biden administration to withdraw education proposals that they argue are meant to promote critical race theory. And the New York Times 1619 Project, which is an abysmal piece of crap if you know anything about it. Look up the project 1619 Project. That has been so dismantled and so debunked and so found to be false by those who oppose it, that I'm surprised they can even try to maintain teaching it. So there's a couple of good issues, I think, that are worth looking at. And especially here in the United States. Gun legislation, Texas is saying, thumbing its nose at the Biden administration. Also thumbing its nose at the Biden administration on critical race theory being taught in schools. So, Michelle, good to see you. In and out. So good to see you. And David Castle, good to see you as well. Well, as you all know from the beginning of this show, hold on, not sure why that's doing that. Our topic tonight is to pick up on where we left off last night on Eve. We're talking about Eve, the story of Eve in Genesis. And by the way, in talking about critical race theory, the way I saw that segueing over is that we have taught all kinds of erroneous things about Eve and about womanhood and feminism and all those things. When you start wrapping them up all together, and some of the anti-feminism that's based in the erroneous stories that were taught to us in the pseudepigrapha, the ancient texts, which aren't really the ancient texts. So the story of Eve in Genesis has given the rise to difficulties for women And as a result, it's been of a major interest to feminist critics of the Bible who've studied it extensively in the last 15 years. And at the heart of the issue is whether the story of Eve and the fall of mankind, whether that story is irretrievably patriarchal or whether its patriarchal elements can be overcome through feminist interpretation. And can this story be reclaimed for women? Can feminist analysis recover it from the centuries of patriarchal interpretation and make it a positive spiritual resource for women? And so there's no biblical story that's had a more profound negative impact on women all throughout history than the story of Eve. And the long tradition of patriarchal and in some cases misogynistic interpretation has today made this text thoroughly unacceptable to a number of women and men from all religious backgrounds. And so in the early Christian writings, Eve is usually depicted as secondary and inferior to Adam because she was created after Adam. The way it was explained to us when I was in seminary, she was created of Adam's rib, not from bone from his head, not a bone from his foot, because that would make her either superior to Adam or beneath Adam, but from his rib, to visually demonstrate that women were to be not equal to, but a little less than the man. And that to me is nonsense. So I think that's why that was written into those texts. So she's also regularly portrayed, Eve, as weak, as seductive, and evil, the one who caused Adam to disobey God's command. And so some of the stuff we went through last night, and we talked about it. So in the traditional understanding of the text in the Bible, Eve was created to be a helper. And we gave the Hebrew word for that last night. That's a ozir. And to the man, because Eve is thought to be secondary and inferior to Adam. The way in which she's a helper is said to be limited. Early interpreters often suggested that Eve was a helper to Adam only for the purpose of procreation. But you got to listen to Ambrose, who was a 4th century bishop of Milan and one of the 4 great doctors of the Latin Church. He said, even though man was created outside paradise in an inferior place, we are told in Genesis that the Lord God took the man and placed him in the Garden of Eden. And he's found to be superior, while women, though created in a better place inside paradise, is found to be inferior. Indeed, after woman was made, she was the first to violate the divine command. She even dragged her husband along with her into sin and showed herself to be insensitive to him. God said, let us make for him a helper like unto himself. And we take this to mean a helper for the purpose of generating human nature. Then this is the way in which a woman is a good helper of less importance. So said Ambrose in the 4th century. And so by Augustine's time, which is the 350s to the 430s AD, Genesis 2 through 3 was well-established cornerstone of a theology that taught that women were secondary and thus inferior and subordinate, that women were evil and seductive. These are the things that were taught as commonplace. So extending the biblical analysis, Thomas Aquinas in the 1200s AD utilized Aristotelian thought to develop further the idea of women's inferiority. Women, he urged, are defective by nature. They're used baggage. They're misbegotten males, he said, born female because of some defect in the active force of maternal disposition or because of some external force, such as a moist south wind. So women, I'll bet you didn't know that. Now, guys, I'll bet you didn't know that either. Most women are defective, and they're defective because of a moist south wind. So what do you think of that? It's YouTube with the blurring, says Field Guy. That's it. I don't know why. I've noticed that too. There's a lot of blurring these days over there, and I'm not sure why it's doing it, but it bothers me. I'm sorry, folks, but that is that's YouTube right now, so it's blurry for everybody. Lepra Cormed came into the room. I don't know if that's somebody. Lirpa Cormed. Are you talking like Lirpa from Star Trek? Bring out the Lirpa. And that's when Kirk and Spock fought in this episode Amok Time because of the Ponfar and all of that. And they had these long staves with the curved blade at one end and I forget what they call them, the big padded weight at the end. And so good to have you here, by the way. Barbie D, good to see you. Michelle Canham-Free, I didn't say hi. Good to see you, sister. And Steve Clark is here. And who else we got? Anybody new? Anybody come in? Well, let's continue on. And so I talked about the Malleus Maleficarum, or Maleficarum. The Malleus Maleficarum. And this was the book written by Dominican priests in the 1400s. It was Heinrich Kramer and Jacob Sprenger, and it was for use in the Inquisition. And it published it in 1486. And it uses Genesis 3, among other biblical texts, to depict women as evil. Not just evil, evil. They're feeble-minded, they're lustful. And this work provided the principal theological justification for the persecution of women as witches. We mentioned that in another topic on Eve a few days ago. And so in the years following its publication, thousands of women were accused of and executed for practicing witchcraft. Why would you want to get rid of chicks? That's my big question. What was with these guys? If they were they, oh, I don't know, if they're Dominican priests, did they like boys? I'm not asking that because I'm insulting Dominican priests, but there was so much in the priesthood due to celibacy. Was that the case behind it? Why did they want to get rid of women so badly? And so it's because they believed that women brought sin into the world. Now, these themes of inferiority, evil, and seductiveness, they're repeatedly emphasized in the Christian writings of Luther, of Calvin, of Knox, all the way to the 20th century papal encyclicals, and the broadcasting of TV fundamentalist preachers. I know John Knox, he was the one that was decrying Mary, Queen of Scots, as being that evil witch of a woman for sitting on the throne and claiming she had a right by God to have the throne. And he decried her for that. So in our own day, some men appeal to Genesis 2-3. They use it to provide a theological basis for their right, and I'm doing the hand quotes, to discipline, hand quotes, physically a wife who's not properly subordinate to them. It's like the old Andrew Dice Clay joke. How did that go? What was the Andrew Dice Clay joke? And this is foul, but I'm going to tell it anyway because it's the thinking. It's what do you call a woman with a black eye? A bitch that doesn't listen. This is the attitude in a lot of these writings. They believed that they could discipline their wives. They could beat their wives. Aren't there still some laws, old laws in the United States on the books in some counties that said 100 years ago, 150 years ago, a man could only beat his wife if he dragged her to the steps of the city hall and beat her there with a cane on the steps of the city hall. So there was accepted, some battered women actually accept the physical abuse because they think it's a husband divinely sanctioned right and duty to be able to beat them because they're not being subordinate. Oh, I got out of line and my husband beat me. So Until quite recently, the traditional interpretation of Genesis 2 through 3 went virtually unchallenged. The American activist Elizabeth Cady Stanton, toward the end of her life, focused her feminist critique on organized religion. And though through her years of political struggle, she had come to appreciate the role of religion, and especially of the Bible, in the oppression of women. In 1895, she published a feminist commentary on the Bible called The Woman's Bible, which contains a feminist reinterpretation of the story of Eve and Adam. And Stanton raised a direct challenge to the centuries-old patriarchal reading of this text. She said this in her book: "The unprejudiced reader must be impressed with the courage, the dignity, and the lofty ambition of the woman. Reading this narrative carefully, it's amazing that any set of men ever claimed that the dogma of the inferiority of women is here set forth in the Genesis story. The conduct of Eve from the beginning to the end is so superior to that of Adam." And this really is kind of the truth. And that's from the Women's Bible, which was published in 1974. Now, however, the biblical scholars and feminists alike, they largely ignored Stanton's pioneering efforts, depatriarchalizing, if that's a word, depatriarchalizing, the biblical interpretation. And not until the rise of the feminist theology of the 1960s did anyone seriously question the image of Eve and the function as a theological paradigm for women that had become established in Christian tradition. Evil, sensual. They cause men to lust and fall from God. So the most extensive and sustained feminist analysis and reinterpretation of the Eve and Adam story was undertaken in the 1970s by the feminist Bible scholar Phyllis Tribble. She, like a number of other feminist exegetes at about the same time, argued that the problem with the Eve-Adam story was to be found not in a text, but rather in centuries of sexist, patriarchal interpretations of the Bible. And she readily concedes that the Bible, largely a man's book, but still believes that the Eve-Adam story can be liberated from a patriarchal interpretation. And Tribble contended that when this is done, the liberating essence of the story for women can be discovered and appropriated. Now, according to Tribble, none of the traditional patriarchal claims is altogether accurate, and most are simply not present in the story itself. Some patriarchal claims, she argues, actually violate the rhetoric of the biblical account. For example, here we go. In the traditional interpretation, man is said to be superior. Now, not in the text, by the way, in the interpretation of the text by scholars. In the traditional interpretation, man is said to be superior because he's created first, while woman is deemed inferior because she's created last. But these same patriarchal interpreters never argue that humans are inferior to animals because they were created after the animals in the priestly creation account. And on the contrary, they regard the final creative act in Genesis 1 as the pinnacle of creation, humanity. And if this interpretive were applied consistently, the creation of the woman in Genesis would be seen as the crowning achievement of divine creativity. So you see, even the interpreters and the scholars got it wrong. They were so inconsistent with their interpretations of these things. Almost makes it sound like they had a political agenda they were upholding. And Amanda B says, women give birth to men. We win hands down. There you go. And men get to help put them there. We win. Woohoo! So traditional interpretations focus on the fact that the serpent speaks to the woman and not to the man. They explain this in a variety of ways. The woman is morally weaker than the man. and thus easy prey for the serpents. For the serpent, the singular, the Nakash character. The woman is simple-minded. She's gullible. She's untrustworthy. The woman is more sexual, and her sexuality can be used by the serpent to ruin the man. And Tribble emphasizes that all of this is speculation. It's not in the text. And that the text itself does not say why the serpent speaks to the woman. She pokes fun at such exegesis. And by suggesting how a woman might indulge in the same kind of speculation, the serpent speaks to the woman because she's the more intelligent of the two, says another interpreter, just twisting the interpretation back on itself. The woman has a better understanding of the divine command, and therefore she's in a better position to act as a theologian and translator. Adam's was probably sitting over there on a rock, scratching his nuts, trying to figure out what to eat next, being distracted by the animals, which we had to name, and couldn't remember these things, and Eve had it kind of wrapped up. So she's more independent than the man. And by contrast, the man is silent, passive, bland, belly-oriented, and he thinks with his stomach, not with his brain. That's just a twisting around and flipping back on itself. It's a kind of a tongue-in-cheek interpretation to counter the other interpretation. Teresa, before a male is born, it's pulled out a little. That's one way. It's a little too late for the pull-out method when the baby's being born. So, in a similar vein, another feminist exegete has noted that Eve's temptation of Adam is not found in the text, but rather has been read into the text by patriarchalist interpreters. Tribble advocates a rereading and a reinterpretation of the story that reads out the entire text. That's exegesis is what it's called. E-X-E-G-E-S-E-S. S-I-S, sorry. Rather than into the text, which is eisegesis. And so in her effort to interpret the text, she uses one of the newer and widely used methodologies of the Bible interpretation, known as rhetorical criticism. Rhetorical critics analyze the literary devices of style that the text was written in, and rhetoric used by the biblical author to convey meaning. And that's a good way to interpret, I believe. Amanda B says, I'm Mandy Moo. I'm Mandy Moo. We have a Mandy Moo. Oh my God, double trouble. There you go. Hey, Mandy Moo. If you're in the group, wherever you are, I don't see you. So welcome to the show if you're here. And welcome, Amanda B, by the way. So, oops, pull out. I cannot change the laws of physics, Captain. So, moving on with this. The woman is created. She's recreated as an Ozir. It's K negdo. And this is usually translated a helper, a helpmate for the man. The words helper and helpmate have a pejorative sense in the English. And as we've seen, traditional interpretations assume this pejorative sense in understanding the relationship of the woman to the man. And Tribble translates the phrase, a companion corresponding to it. And she notes that Ozer is a relational term, the meaning of which is totally missed in the English. The word helper. And the relation implied is a beneficial one, not one of inferiority. And some biblical passages use this same Hebrew word to describe God. But you find it in Exodus, in Deuteronomy, in Psalm. But in these instances, translators use help rather than helper to avoid the pejorative sense. And so Tribble argues that the idea of mutuality and equality is conveyed by the phrase kenegdo. So, Tribble also challenges the patriarchal assertion that the superiority of the man over the woman is established by the man's naming the woman. She shall be called woman, as he had previously named the other creations in the garden. And Tribble points out that the usual naming formula to call the name use, for example, in all different passages in Genesis, is not used here in Genesis 2:23. The calling of the woman by the man does not signify the establishment of the man's power over the woman, but rather a rejoicing in their mutuality. The man does eventually name the woman Eve, and only then does he assert his rule over her. But at that point, when he names her Eve, sin has already corrupted the relationship of mutuality and equality between the man and the woman. Thus, the man's naming of the woman, his dominating of the woman, is not part of the goodness of creation, but rather the very symbol of his sinfulness. So, according to male domination of female is not divine by intention, but as a consequence and a sign of sinfulness. And so, as such, it's not to be held as an ideal, but deplored as a condition to be overcome in order to recover out of our full humanity. This is what Tribble put forward, her theory. So when the story is reread in this way, functions to liberate, not to enslave. And so the feminist approach taken by Tribble and others is a reformist one, to be certain. And the reformists believe that the biblical traditions contain are reformable and recoverable at the core. And so the counterparts of reformists are the revolutionaries, feminists who maintain that the core biblical symbols of Judaism and Christianity are male and therefore unreformable. That's revolutionary, not reformist. And so most female feminist biblical scholars and theologians are reformists who have remained within the Jewish and Christian traditions and have developed a variety of exegetical and hermeneutical strategies in an effort to reclaim the Bible as a positive spiritual resource for women. And I tend to go along with that viewpoint. So, Madam, says Amanda B., just standing out. A very fun way to learn. I missed something in there. Catherine Sanders, how you doing, Catherine? Good. Of the younger guard kids for the lunar eclipse in the morning. Oh, very cool. And so recently, there's been this growing sense of uneasiness that's been detected among some of the reformists. There's less optimism that the whole Bible can be recovered, and an acknowledgement that some parts might be so thoroughly patriarchal that they might have to be excluded from the canon. Do you realize that? There might be some books of the Bible that should be taken out of biblical canon because they are almost exclusively patriarchal, which is not a teaching of Jewish or Christian theology in its purest form. So this in turn has led to a belief that they should be excluded from the canon, and to a questioning of the whole notion of canon and of biblical authority, the viewpoints on women and the subjugation of women. But the Eve-Adam story isn't among those texts, and it's widely regarded by feminists as one text that can be reclaimed from the pseudepigraphic texts from all the different texts down through the centuries and millennia that try to paint Eve in this negative picture. They can be reclaimed. They can be seen to speak with this strong positive message of sexual equality. And so in Tribble's rereading of the story, the traditional view of Eve is overturned. The even Tribble's interpretation isn't the simple-minded, gullible female who obviously and divisively seduces the male to sin. Rather, she is the intelligent, informed, perceptive theologian, ethicist, hermeneut, and rabbi who speaks with clarity and authority and who acts independently but without deception. So there was no deception by Eve. So is this optimism on the part of the feminist reformists about Genesis 2 and 3? Is it well-founded optimism? Feminist exegetes have certainly raised a very important challenge to traditional interpretation, but their efforts have been successful in reforming the way in which Eve and the Eve and Adam's story is understood. The answer seems to be that no, at least not yet. That hasn't happened. Mainline biblical scholarship has almost completely ignored the work of feminists on the Genesis 2 and 3 text. For example, Howard N. Wallace's 1985 study, The Eden Narrative, which surveys recent trends in interpreting Genesis 2 through 3, doesn't include a single reference to any of the feminist studies on the text. Clearly, Wallace didn't think such feminist interpretations, or reinterpretations, if you will, were significant. And another particularly interesting example is Jerome T. Walsh's article, Genesis 2:4b through 3:24. Remember, that's that second story of creation. A syncretic, hello, not synchronistic, a synchronic approach. So like Walsh seems completely unaware of the feminist critiques of the text and the interpretation of the text, as he reasserts many of the traditional patriarchal interpretations of the story. And what makes this particularly ironic is that Walsh uses the same critical method as Tribble, rhetorical criticism, that method of interpretation. And he uses that to arrive at a diametrically opposed conclusion about the relationship between man and woman. So Walsh assumes that Ha-Adam is male from the beginning of the story. He thinks Genesis 2:23 is a decree of naming, and that the woman is a matching helper. And like Tribble, Walsh finds in the story a concentric ring pattern, although he doesn't identify the pattern in the same way. Walsh identifies 7 scenes, 6 of which are balanced around the central, the 4th scene. Scene 2, Genesis 2:18 through 25. Walsh argues establishes a type of hierarchy among the characters. Yahweh, God, is supreme. The man is the highest of all creatures, with the woman closely associated but subordinated to him. Least of all are the animals. So by the central scene, scene 4, where they eat of the fruit and suddenly realize that they're naked, poof, this proper social hierarchy has been inverted, according to Walsh. The woman is presented here as superior to the man, so that he's now presumed as her man husband. Her man husband. And here the woman who's been named for her derivation from him in Genesis 2:23, now as the man designated in terms of his relationship with her. He's become an adjunct to the woman, who is supposed to be a matching helper to the man. And the proper order is then restored in scene 6 in Genesis 3:14 through 19, when man's superiority over the woman is explicitly stated in the woman's punishment. In pain shall you bring forth children. Genesis 3:16. With Walsh, we seem to be back right where we started with this. So one of the newest approaches to the study of the Eve-Adam story, the structuralist analysis, also largely ignores the efforts of feminist reformist interpreters. And structuralism isn't a methodology in itself, but rather a perspective of methodology. It's a point of view, a way of thinking at the world that is essentially independent of the subject matter. And so the structures of various kinds of relationships that structuralism investigates lie below the surface of the text, the level investigated by rhetorical critics, and thus can't be apprehended directly. Structuralist analysis techniques identify and describe structures that operate at the unconscious or the subconscious level. And so the earliest structuralist study of the Eve-Adam story was undertaken by the British anthropologist Sir Edmund Leach in 1961. In the introduction to his analysis, Leach notes that binary oppositions are intrinsic to human thought. Binary oppositions are intrinsic to human thought. For example, objects are either alive or not alive. Beings are either male or not male. Sorry, I don't care what your politics or preferences are. There's male and female. There's no in between. There might be, well, I take that back. There might be some genetic crossovers when you have hermaphrodites and so on, but we're not getting into that now. I'm hitting that very lightly. So is this the binary opposition that interests us in the connection with Leach's structuralist analysis of the Eve-Adam story? Leach notes that for males, non-males are divided into women of two kinds. One, our kind, with whom sexual relations are incestuous, and two, the other kind, with whom sexual relations are allowed. And so every human society devises rules to try to regulate incest and exomeny, that's marrying outside one's own group. And a logical problem arises, however, with respect to human beings. If the original human parents were of the same kind, then their relationship was incestuous. But if they were of different kinds, then what exactly was the other kind to which one of the original pair belonged? Myths of human origins, according to Leach, serve to mediate this paradox by introduction of a third category that is anomalous or abnormal in terms of ordinary rational categories. And this goes on. This study is pretty intense. So punch it in the throat, Scotty. He says, that's right, brother. So looking at some of the comments here, trying to see. Doug Stack without interviewing Scotty. Oh, it's something totally different. Sorry. Pure Love Ascension is your how you doing? Welcome into the chat room tonight, by the way. And let's see what else we got going on here. I'm looking more at the recent stuff. So for a woman to be strong, proud, and a danger to men, self-confidence, it's feminism. Something like that, Amanda B., according to these guys. So now I just talked about this whole binary thing. The rational categories that form a binary opposition in Genesis are, according to Leach, man or ha-adam, which Leach assumes is male, and animal. Those are the only two categories. Ha-adam, or mankind, is what he's saying. And so none of the animals, however, can overcome man's loneliness. And the woman thus serves as the anomalous, abnormal other who's introduced to mediate this opposition. You know, women, you can be as anomalous and abnormal as you want. Men love having you around. So she belongs in a paradigm or a paradigmatic set of mediating terms that consist of the creeping things and the serpent in Genesis. And all members of this set belong to the confused category of mediator that lies between the rational categories man and animal. And thus for Leach, Eve apparently doesn't belong fully to the category kind of animal or to the category kind human in the order of creation. She's unique. So Leach wrote this study before the feminist reformists' analysis of the Eve-Adam story. So he may perhaps be forgiven for his androcentric conclusions. And more recent structural analysis, however, are likewise unaware of the feminist reformist analysis. They're not so easily forgiven, especially nowadays. In the 1980s, an entire issue of highly regarded scholarly journal, the Semea, was devoted to structural studies of the Eve-Adam story. And nowhere was there a direct reference to the work of Tribble or any other feminist exegete. And not surprisingly, most of these studies end up supporting the familiar old patriarchal interpretations, albeit by a different analytical route. And you know what? There is so much more to this. I've got about another half hour of material here. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to leave off with it. Otherwise, we'll be going all night. And so, guys, I hope you get something out of this. This is interesting. Now, not all of us are Christian. Not all of us are Jewish. Not all of us come from that background. Some of us may have abandoned that long ago for other things. I'm doing this study because this is the predominant, two of the predominant religions on the earth. And these Abrahamic religions. And this is what was taught. This has been taught down through the centuries. Yet if you'll find, as we do with this show, there's so much more to some of these texts than has been revealed or that's been understood until more recently. That's why we look into this. So I hope you're getting something out of that. My son got that one. He did fine, except for the second. Okay, these are other things. So there you go. Matt Finn says, love you, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a great evening, and we'll see you here tomorrow, same time. And guys, I want to thank you for being here. Happy birthday, Susie Q, by the way. And glad you could be here tonight. And that's it. That's all I got for tonight. So, folks, remember, if you're not a member of this channel, you can go down and hit the join button, and you can become a member. And it's easy. It helps us support, pay the bills, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't let me buy my new truck, but it helps us out, and we appreciate it. So $2, $5, $15 a month. One of those three. And so check it out. See if it appeals to you. And on that note, I'm going to say thanks for being here. I appreciate you all. Rainey says goodnight. She went up and took the kids to bed. And about a half an hour, 40 minutes ago, so she's gone. And I'm going to do likewise very shortly. So thanks for being here. And you know what? Live long and prosper.
You're listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.